Hey y'all, Mac here, back with another build guide. This time it's going to be a Golden Charlatan Spark Occultist. This build archetype, as well as the initial build design, is from a smaller YouTuber named Gert, and I will go ahead and put all of his information down in the description. And so if you want to go look at the original setup, you can. I've made some changes to make it more comfortable for my playing personally. I made the initial build a little bit more tankier than his setup. But overall, it plays very similarly. The item choices and everything are also pretty similar. I did make some more changes to the gear, and I will go over everything that is different, as well as what you can do itemization-wise. And I'll also cover some topics about the build that he may not have gone over, just so I'm not, beating a dead horse with this build. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so what exactly is the Golden Charlatan? Well, it's a two-handed sword that drops off of Uber Incarnation of Dread, and this is new this league, I believe, and this has honestly been one of the coolest items I think that they've added so far. So the main line on this item that we care about is gain a random shrine buff for 30 seconds when you kill a rare unique enemy. What this means is that we're basically getting another layer of bar power / headhunter buffs or headhunter-like buffs. And when you pair this with headhunter, it becomes a really, really great tool to be used for juice mapping where you have a lot of rare spawning. How this sword actually works besides this is you basically have Resolute Technique minus the accuracy. So you just have critical strikes. I guess it's not like Resolute Technique, but you basically don't have any extra damage from crits with only attacks. So do keep that in mind. You can play spells with this and still deal damage, crit damage, with crits. But if you're using an attack skill, you still can crit, but you won't be doing any extra crit damage from your crit multi. And so what this means is that for spells, you can probably use this no real consequences, but for attack skills, you're probably looking at more cast on crit builds being the better setup, as you can cast on crit spells and then crit with those and gain bonuses from your multi. Nevertheless, I was originally trying to make an Ice Crash build with this, and I realized that I just really wouldn't have enough damage with everything set up, and I'd be losing the benefit of the Diamond Shrine. I'll talk more about the shrine buffs a little bit later in the video, as well as what you want to fish for in a map, and how you can actually go about playing your juice maps with this item. But besides this item, we're going to be running two other build enabling items for this build, and that's going to be the goal. So the goal is going to increase the duration of shrine buffs, as well as increase the effect of shrine buffs. 75% effect is obviously very powerful when you combine that with another 75% from Blunderbore, and the 50% duration boosts them from 30 seconds to 45, which I think is extremely beneficial to have them rolling basically throughout most of your map. Besides that, you get these lesser shrines as you go. I don't really click them, but if you need a small bonus from these lesser shrines, like maybe a speed bonus if you don't have it, then those are actually pretty nice to click, and you'll get a decent benefit as they're buffed by both of these two items. Blunderbore is just giving us Lesser Brutal and Massive Shrine. It's these two, one's knockback and one's life, and AoE, and this is just going to help make us a little bit tankier at baseline. But the only real thing we care about on this is effective shrine buffs on you. So this paired with gold gives us 150% increased effective shrine buffs, which means we get 2.5 times the base effect. I'm sorry, 1.5 times the base effect of shrines. And yeah, this is honestly a extremely necessary setup for this build. You need both of these uniques. And the reason why these are influenced is because we're also running Astrolab. And Astrolab is just giving us +3 all Ellie and +3 elemental support. But more importantly, it's also letting us shock, ignite, and chill with our damage from our Spark. And our Spark is going to be all chaos damage. I'll go into that as well. In terms of our belts, we are playing a Headhunter. This is just going to be way better than any other option since we are already fishing for rare kills in order to stack our power. Headhunter just makes the most sense in this slot. So besides that, there's some flexibility in the rest of the gearing. Originally, Gert was playing the Darkrai Vectors, and you can get those influenced fairly easily. The downside to those is obviously you need to ramp your Frenzy charges. This is a Frenzy stacking setup, so you're going to be ramping your move speed and evasion and everything else with Darkrai's. And besides the ramp, you also miss out on being able to get ailment avoidance through this as opposed to through Purity of Elements, which I am not running. A pair of rare boots, I think, is the better option because also you can get effective non-damaging ailments, which is going to buff our shock ailment applied. And you can also get some chaos res and life from these boots compared to Darkrai Vectors. So that means we need to influence another item. Well, the gloves, you can either play Alleopathy, which can be influenced, but you want to look for +1 Frenzy or Curse with Despair on hit on those instead. Finding a double influence one with the correct influence and that corrupt is just very low probability. But if you are able to do that, you can run Alleopathy instead. It just gives you a bunch of flat on your spells. But your other option is to maybe look for a glove like this. The end game goal would be having good stats with +1 Frenzy in the explicits, as well as +1 Max Frenzy on the implicit with Curse on Despair on hit. That is a pair of gloves I've seen, I think, on trade one time for like 300 div, and the stats were all really crap except for the +1 Frenzy. So, +2 Frenzy on gloves is possible. It's not something I would bet on. Instead, just look for a +1 Frenzy with good enough stats in the explicits. Your option is to do that, or to play unique gloves, with influence if you'd like to do that as well. But the rings, this is where there's like a lot of flexibility as well. I have a current +1 Max Frenzy ring. You're going to want cast speed on both just to make the build a little bit smoother, as well as to make Frostblink a little bit smoother since we're using Wintry Blast. So a +1 Frenzy ring is going to play into the Charge Shrine buff, and it's going to give us just an insane amount of damage. Every Frenzy charge is, I think, over 100 million damage with all Shrine buffs activated, so definitely worth getting one of these rings. And even more so, if you have Influence covered everywhere else and you have Curse covered everywhere else, you can mirror this ring onto your other slot with Touch of Calandra. Or if you're crazy enough and rich enough, you can probably craft another ring if you need separate stats. Do keep in mind you can also get cold damage per frenzy on these rings in the implicit. If someone has like a mirror ring, that is an option, right? So don't be afraid to do that if you have the funds for it. My other ring currently is a Cogwork ring. I only need 2 implicits, which is life and non-channeling. And having 4 explicits is really nice because I can cover reses, get Curse on hit, as well as get cast speed. And those are all going to be buffed by 25%. And so this, I think, was just my best option. It also I can also get double influence on it. And the only other real stat I would maybe replace life for is cold damage per frenzy, which is an option, or cold damage per against chilled or frozen enemies. That's another option. But realistically, all we really need is a Curse on rings or gloves, and just some cast speed and whatever reses you need, as well as the non-channeling. Again, there's a lot of options you can play around with here, but having Curse on hit is really important to make use of our Occultist Ascendancy. Alright, so there's a couple things on the tree that I like to make note of, and some like items that you can kind of swap around, and also that might be different than the original Gert build. So we are running Lycia, just like he is, with 50% all elemental damage converted to Chaos. Chaos is going to be our only source of damage with Spark, and as such, we're getting way more value scaling Wither effect and less res through the Occultist Ascendancy. This is honestly just a very powerful set of nodes with Beacon of Withering Presence, and especially on bosses, it's very noticeable. Also, getting 60% Chaos res just makes this node all the better. We are running Profane Bloom, so we want to be cursing on hit to get this explode, and this is going to help our early clear before we get Shrine buff stacking a lot, as well as make our clear after Shrine buffs just absolutely absurd, since we're going to be getting a 1.5 times effect, or 2.5 times effect technically, of a Gloom Shrine slash Massive Shrine, which is just going to boost our AoE like crazy. So how are we getting convert besides this 50%? Well, we're taking a Foulborn Blue Nightmare, which has this mod that says passives granting light res or all res and radius also grant lightning damage converted to chaos at 100% of its value, 1-to-1. So we can tattoo some lightning res on our tree in the int nodes. We don't need any attributes because of the Kispiros. And as such, we are taking all of this, we cover reses, and we get convert to 100%, which is perfect. Besides that, there are two other jewels that we're going to want. We're going to want the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh for Legion of the Primordial. This is insanely expensive. I think it was like close to 200 by the time I was looking at it. But golem buffs are just really too strong. You're honestly not going to find a better alternative, I'd say, for 2 jewel slots. But you can maybe PoB something. I wasn't able to see anything that was really all that worth. In terms of rune grafts, we really want rune graft to the warp so we can get less, like, we get our shrine buffs for just a little bit longer. On top of that, getting debuffs expire on you faster is just kind of nice quality of life. Rune graft to gem craft is really nice for hitting a breakpoint, which I will go over a little bit later in the video. But I would say these 2 rune grafts are mandatory. As far as our timeless jewel goes, there's some variations that you can take. I think the most important one to have is frenzy charge gain on hit. Besides that, I'm taking a void shock because I'm playing the storm shroud setup, as I'm also playing haste. You don't have to play haste. You can play purity of elements, take a Watcher's Eye instead of storm shroud with chaos res. That way you don't have to fish for chaos res on other gear. But this is my setup because I also have 120% crit multi from this 1 jewel and from 3 nodes. So this is honestly a pretty good one. I think last time I checked it was like 20 something div for this one. So it's not too crazy. The impossible escape for pain attunement is mandatory. You need this to be able to spec these nodes without having to travel through all these small nodes. Our clusters are pretty expensive. I think when I bought them, they were like 25 div. I don't think it's really worth crafting them. They're really painful to craft. But basically, this is just Explodey. You're only taking Unspeakable Gifts and Wicked Pow. Having Unholy Might is pretty nice, but I didn't really find it to be that mandatory. If someone believes otherwise, please let me know why, but I just didn't find a good reason for that. On our other medium clusters, we're scaling Aerodynamics and Streamlined, Projectile Speed, and Pierce, as well as just more Projectile Speed and Damage. And we're going to have 3 of those paired with 1 Megalomaniac. This one's going to be really tough to find. Since I'm running Haste and Wrath, I am speccing both of these. And what's nice about the Wrath one is we get even more effect of Shock. Debuffs expire faster, again, just quality of life. And this one also actually gives me ES Leech, which is really nice, as well as Hinder. And Hinder is just there to stop the rares from like running up to you and one-shotting you at the start of the map, really. Yeah, but besides that, the only other jewel that I'd like to talk about, besides the Storm Shroud, is Foulborn Unnatural Instinct. This one down here is absurd value. You get move speed, all res, life, and most importantly, +1 crit, maximum frenzy charges, and 30% crit multi. And this is going to be just insanely powerful for 2 points. I guess technically 3 points. But yeah, this is providing a lot of damage. Not mandatory, but definitely worth taking if you can afford it. Other than that, we're tattooing projectile speed across our dex nodes, and we're tattooing chaos damage on the rest of our int nodes that we don't need past the conversion. But yeah, besides that, I think that is all for the tree. Again, you can run a Watcher's Eye instead of Storm Shroud if you have Purity of Elements, as that gives you elemental ailment immunity already. But I like this setup because I can just get percent shock avoidance from my Elegant Hubris. Alright, so let's get into the gem links and kind of what I would say is maybe swappable and what's not. So we're playing Spark of the Nova. This just gives us more projectiles and launches them around in a circle. And it's just going to be a better option, especially with how much cast speed we're going to be getting from all of our Shrine buffs and Headhunter buffs. Now, linked to it, we have Awakened added lightning damage support. So we get the +2 of supported lightning skill gems from getting this as a 620 gem, as well as getting the Rune of Gem crap. So this just gives us an extra level on Spark of the Nova, which I think is really worth it. I would highly recommend getting the 620 version of this. I didn't really see any real reason to take 620 of these two, so I opted not to take them. If someone knows why you would want to take 620, do let me know, but I don't think it's worth taking these unless you can just afford it and you don't really have any other place to put your currency. Hypothermia is just going to give us 32% more damage, since we're always chilling, and Inspiration is there just to reduce the cost. Without Inspiration, the cost is a little bit more uncomfortable, and more importantly, we're not getting like that crit chance and the more elemental damage. Inspiration is just really good to have on this build, and I wouldn't swap it out. So most of the main links for Spark, I think you could maybe argue to drop Control of Destruction for like Awakened Void Manipulation to get more chaos damage. But since we're getting Diamond Shrine, which just caps our crit, I think this is still worth taking at baseline, because even without this equipped, our crit chance is really low since we're not scaling any. On my other links, I'm not running a Chaos Golem as I'm already Chaos Res capped without it. Instead, I am running a Chaos Golem of the Maelstrom, which is just applying Wither. Obviously, since we already apply Wither, it's kind of whatever. But it is going to apply an increased effect of Withered as well. Just there, if it's running around and I'm not like close enough to a mob, it might apply it. Kind of flexible here. I'm running Lightning Golem, Stone Golem, and Flame Golem with Enhanced just so I get more buff effect from these golems. And these are giving me quite a lot of bonuses due to Liege of the Primordial. In our AG link, I'm running Elemental Army, Empower, Minion Speed, Meat Shield, Minion Life. Minion Speed is not mandatory, but it is nice to keep him kind of caught up with us all the time. And it lets him like move out of degen and whatnot a lot quicker. The AG setup is going to be a Kingmaker setup with all the usual suspects of Masked Stitch Demon, Garb of the Ephemeral, and the Legacy of Fury, so we're applying Scorch and getting more damage. I'm running Wrath, Zealotry, and Haste. And Haste can be swapped out for your good old-fashioned Purity of Elements to get Element Immune if you're running a Purity of Elements Chaos Res Watcher's Eye. Again, I opted for Haste because this setup was just more available to me at the time, and I frankly do like the base movement speed it provides, as you feel really sluggish without it. Besides that, Frostbank of Wintry Blast is our travel skill. This doesn't really have any cooldown, so it's more based off your cast speed. And when we're full shrine buffed, holding down this will get you across a map in like a second. It's pretty crazy. Ignore the Vitality. I'm running that just because I have nothing else to reserve my mana on, and I don't really have another good gem to really slot in. Our Flasks that we're running is going to be 1 of the Prophet, 2 fun to not have, acts kind of like a mini Headhunter, definitely worth having. Aziri's Promise is our main source of Life Leech. With the spells, you won't really need Life Leech at all once you have Shrine buffs ramping, but this does keep us alive at the start of the map just so we can kill a couple of rares. Oriath's End for even more explodes. This build just stacks as much explodes as possible if you haven't noticed. All of the explodes are going to be scaled by the Massive Shrine AoE, which is just going to be crazy. Move Speed Flask, as well as Dying Sun. Again, more AoE and additional projectiles. Can't go wrong for more damage. And explode coverage. Alright, so Gert has done the hard work of putting together like all the buffs and benefits that you're getting from shrines. You can look these up online if you don't believe the actual bonuses, or if you just want to learn more about the shrines. They're always on like PoE Wiki and whatnot. But for the most part, this is what we're getting baseline just from our Blunderbore body armor. And besides this, our AG is giving us Coiling Strike, Fortify, and Crit Multi from the Kingmaker. After we get shrines, Diamond Shrine is a really big one you want to fish for, as this crit caps us, meaning we always crit and make benefit of our 400% crit multi. Massive Shrine is really big for our Explodey. Everything else from here down is kind of whatever. You want the Shield Shrine, just so you're able to spam cast if you have other shrine buffs, like Acceleration Shrine. Replenishing, I would say, is the only one that's kind of whatever. You get a lot of life regen, so you're probably like regenning close to 40% of your max life per second, actually more than that. But yeah, it's not nearly as important as the other ones. Brutal Shrine, obviously, just more damage. Echoing Shrine, you're gonna see your character basically stop casting, and it's just gonna be the animation of casting is not gonna exist anymore. It's just your character is just gonna stand still or T-pose, and this is like gonna give you so much more damage. But this is one that this plus like Acceleration Shrine plus like the Defense Shrine, so you have enough ES to cast. That alone is probably gonna be enough for you to kill bosses with. But the real shrine buff that is going to enable you to just literally kill anything almost instantly is going to be Resonating Shrine. And what this gives, mainly, is it's going to give us cast speed per frenzy charge. So we're getting 80% increased cast speed. We're getting 80% more damage. And we're also getting just a lot of other bonuses from the 3 free charges that we get from power and endurance charges. And so this shrine is something that if I see on my character, I may just beeline a boss, just so I can guarantee it dies, mainly in T17s. But that's not something you have to do. You can usually kill bosses, again, with just like 3 of the other ones. But yeah, this one is really strong. So, besides that one, there is also Gloom Shrine. And we all know Gloom Shrine, it's fantastic. Everything just explodes when they die. And this is going to scale with our AoE. And you're, again, just going to be clearing maps, like, insanely fast once you get shrine buffs going. I'm clearing my fortress maps. If I get an early Legion or if I get an early set of rares that I can kill, I will usually finish the map in under 3 minutes. And the boss usually doesn't present any issues ever. Now, that being said, there are specific mechanics that you want to be looking out for, and I'll go into those right about now. Okay, so the reality of this build is that without shrine buffs and without headhunter buffs rolling, you're actually honestly fairly weak. Your top end damage hits around 11 to 12 mil with my current setup, and honestly, I think that's being generous because you need all like everything off. You need max shock and everything. And the reality is that it is a very weak build without these buffs. It is designed primarily for that juice mapping where you're able to add a lot of rares to your map. And again, it has a caveat of just straight up dying at the start of maps because you can't get rammed fast enough, or because you run into whatever godforsaken rare that you stack up with Nemesis mods. As such, also, things like King's March, right? If you get kidnapped, or if your like shipmates get kidnapped or whatever, at this point, since I'm only playing one build, I just pay ransom, right? And I lose the shipment. It is what it is. It can do the boss, but it takes so long that I honestly don't think it's worth it. So I just skip those again. That is the downside of this build. It, again, needs those buffs to start. But once it gets those, again, I'm hitting around 1 billion damage on PoE easily. And I think it's going to be similar, and you can definitely get even more damage than that if you get more frenzy charges. I think what I have honestly is plenty, and again, getting 1 or 2 acceleration plus defense shrine plus echo is enough to clear anything I really want to in the game. And again, having baseline tankiness with my setup is feeling a lot better. I die a lot less frequently at the start of maps compared to when I was running the like verbatim version that Gert was playing. But nevertheless, I'm sure there's some other ways you can figure out scaling the build to maybe make it better even at baseline. Cast on crit, again, is like one thing that I think is potentially good for it, but I'm not too sure. Until then, I think with this build, running things like Legion and using it almost like a battery to recharge your shrine buffs or to get your shrine buffs running at the start of the map can be really good. Legion's nice because all the monsters are in stasis. They can't do anything to you. So you can kill all the rares for free, get their modifiers for Headhunter, and get their shrine buffs. Things like Harbinger could also be good. I tested it a little bit. It seemed alright, but it just wasn't on the same level as Legion. Which being said, Legion, you can do 5 ways solo. I've tried that. You can get four jewels from it. You can also farm Ghost Busting Legion. You can't do it super effectively unless you do some like gear swapping, but it still feels really good to clear those timeless conflict legions, assuming you're okay with the lag. There's not really too much more I really want to go over with the build. I think it's at a good place where I have it right now. If I decide to make some more improvements or find some more upgrades here and there, I'll try to post an update video, talk about what I improved. But for now, I'm really happy that someone figured out a really cool setup with the Golden Charlatan. When I saw this sword and when I saw some gameplay of it, I immediately knew this was going to be insane. And I think I was right in thinking that. Again, I would say all the credit goes to Gert for initially coming up with the concept of this build. I don't know if there's anyone else that was involved, but he did a really good job at like getting the setup going, making everything feel relatively smooth. And I'm happy with how I'm able to kind of make some changes. Also, again, just make the build a little bit tankier at baseline. And yeah, hope this was a fun little guide. And I'm looking to maybe make one more build before the league ends, actually. I farmed up way more currency than I expected. And assuming this build liquidates, I will be able to do one final project. So do stay tuned for that. But until next time, ciao.